Everybody, good foggy evening to you. I had a really fun walk down to World Headquarters this evening because we're at that temperature where it's a little bit above freezing, and I think Demetrius Ivory explained it pretty well on WGN. I won't be able to translate all that well, but it's really cool out. So if you get a chance to peek out or even go for a walk later on, I highly recommend it. We're going to go ahead and get going because we've got a whole lot to share. And I did have a little technical difficulty here, so I'm going to see if I can get this to work from the beginning. Oh, look at that. No, it's not going to go. Let's try. Let me try closing it out and try opening it again. Hold on. We're going to share our screen. We're going to optimize. And where did it go? Hold on just a second. There we go. There we go. All right, you know what? We're gonna just go ahead and start. Nope, see, it's not playing. Yeah. We're gonna try it one more time and pick this one. Okay. Now, before we get going, can everybody see that it says the good-natured hour? And just one of you has to reply.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Gay. Let's see if we can get it to go from the beginning. Ah, excellent work, puppy. Where are you when I need you? Every week I threaten to explain some of these photos, and I thought tonight might be a good night to start. A couple of people had said, you know, when those little pictures are showing at the start of the program, there's a chipmunk there, and what does he have in his hands? If you look closely, it looks, well, it doesn't look like a nut or a seed, does it? There's a good reason for that. It's not. That little chipmunk is actually displaying a behavior that we don't see terribly often, but it does actually happen fairly frequently. It's just not on display a lot. This chipmunk is in this carnivore mode. That is a frog. Now, whether the chipmunk chased down and killed the frog, I kind of doubt that, but chipmunks and mice, animals that we tend to think of as being pretty herbivorous in their habits, do consume meaty proteins, especially during the breeding season. This photo was taken by my friend Peggy Doty, who runs the Russell Woods Natural Resources Center out in DeKalb County. And she looked outside and went through the same series of questions that I think we all would have. Is, oh, what's that chipmunk got in its paws? And what is, and there's other more graphic angles showing that it was indeed a frog. But anyway, that's the story of the chipmunk with the weird thing in its little paws. We'll cover some more of these photos as time goes on. So if you were able to read last week's column, you saw that we talked about the topic of eye shine. And the photo that we used to illustrate the column that ran in the King County Chronicle was this one. This is an excellent example of my wildlife photography skills. Now, if we analyze it a little bit, we can see that this was at a playground. This is actually over at Delnor Woods Park. I put a couple of enhancements into the photo. So you can kind of see who this was. This was Mama Deer and her 2 young of the year. This photo was taken in very late summer or early fall a couple of years ago. And, you know, looking back at it, I mean, this is fairly typical of my kind of photography. It's not quite what you're going for. I was, you know, hoping for deer at dusk, but I got deer staring back at me. As luck would have it, I did not delete the photo and ended up doing some research and learned all about this fascinating phenomenon we call eye shine. Okay, sorry about that. Eye shine is actually something that it's not displayed in all animals. It tends to be more prevalent in nocturnal animals because it does enhance their eyesight in low light conditions. So I made a little graphic based on some graphics I saw on the internet. I'm not an optometrist or an ophthalmologist or anything that even remotely would resemble an eye doctor, although I did work a couple summers doing the yard work over at the Wheaton Eye Clinic, but doesn't really qualify me to speak anything beyond what I put into this graphic. The tepidum lucidum is this layer back here. It is behind the retina, but this is what causes the reflection. So when light enters the eye, here's the front of the eye, and say we've got a light beam coming in, passes through the retina, hits this reflective layer behind the retina, and bing, and bang, and boom, 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 that, boom, I forgot to put 4 booms in, that light is reflected back out towards the light source, which sometimes is the flash of a camera, sometimes it's a flashlight or a porch light. There's actually a fair amount of reading you can do on the internet about the phenomenon of eye shine. And there's even some experts who say you can look at the color of the eye shine and determine what animal eyes are reflecting what you're seeing. Now, I don't know about you, my eyes aren't that good. If I see something reflecting back at me, I can't distinguish whether it's green or white or yellow. I can just tell that something is shining back. And sometimes it depends on the animal and the angle as well. What I tend to go by more is where I'm seeing those eyes. Are they very low to the ground? Are they up in a tree? How are they moving? I had an experience, I may have included this in the column, I can't remember, but a few years back I was walking over to Hickory Knolls from my house, and I have a little shortcut that I take that takes me through the parking lot behind the Kane County Fairgrounds. If you walk through there, hopefully I wasn't trespassing, but there's a little footpath then that takes you into the Harvest Hill subdivision. If you pick the right street, you'll go west, and you will end up on Peck Road, and you're right across from James O'Brien Community Park and Hickory Knolls. So I take that shortcut frequently in the daytime. I had never done it at night. This was the week after the Kane County Fair. And as I was walking along, I realized I didn't know where the footpath was on the west side of that parking lot. I thought I was, heading in the right direction, but and another thing about me walking at night, I don't like to use extra light. I like to let my eyes adjust to the lower light conditions. It's surprising how much you can see. And plus, the parking lot by the fairgrounds is not really all that dark, but it was just dark enough. I couldn't find that footpath. Got my cell phone out. I turned the flashlight on the phone on, and what greets me but 6 or 7 pairs of eyes that were around knee height, maybe a little bit higher. So that's too tall for raccoons unless they were all, standing around on their hind legs, having a cocktail or something. I'm pretty sure that I walked into a family group of coyotes. Again, this was the week after the fair. The fair produces a lot in the the way of food waste, food trash. People walk out to their cars and they, give a corn dog a chuck, or they spill their popcorn. Those kinds of enticements will bring in animals that like to scavenge on those things. And whether the coyotes were going after the corn dogs or whether they were going after the things that eat the corn dogs, I don't know. But there were enough coyotes that I felt maybe I should take a different route. So I ended up actually backing off. I headed over to Campton Hills Road, and I walked a little ways out of my way to actually make it to Hickory Knolls. But that was a very real and up close experience with eye shine, and those eyes again were the height that they were. It was too low for deer, it was too high for a raccoon or a possum, and then there were an awful lot of them. So that's generally what I tend to go by. I rounded up a few photos over the years. Some of these are from game cameras. You might recognize this one in the lower left. This was a little experiment that I did with Valerie Blaine, who used to be the manager at Creek Bend. We hauled a roadkill deer carcass out into the middle of a field to see what would come to it. Now, the camera that took this coyote picture, you can see there was a lot of reflection, but the eyes were glowing quite a bit in some of the pictures we didn't save from that particular night at 3:30 a.m. This one is a little bit better example of the eye shine phenomenon in coyotes. This, if you were tuned in a couple months ago when we had the flying squirrel video from the Hickory Knolls Natural Area, you can see the eye shine there as the animal was about to leap over to the tree next door. We caught a skunk on the trail this past summer, and then here's some raccoons in a suburban backyard, again exhibiting that eye shine. Now here it does kind of have a little greenish cast to it, but again, I would go more by the position, its relative position to the ground, and the positions with the relation to each other. Skunks have very close set eyes that are really, really low to the ground. Raccoons have close set eyes that are a little bit higher up. Flying squirrels have eyes that fly between the trees. So keep that in mind. You heard it here first. Now, I threw this in as I was going through my nighttime photos. This was one of the years that we ran our event, Gone Squatchin'. This shows that Sasquatches do not have eye shine, and that actually coincides with the rest of us humans walking around. Humans or humanoids are not known to have eye shine because we are primarily diurnal animals. Now, Squatches may, dispute that, but that's another topic for another time. And then this is an activity that I've done a few times over the years. I've always wanted to do it as part of a night hike, but I've never had the right conditions or the right group that it would be doable with. But spiders also have eyes that reflect light. And if you can find a hollow tree that's still standing, or even if it's fallen down, but it's big enough and hollow enough that you can crawl inside of it. The tree I used to use when I worked at Red Oak was still standing. It was hollow, and it actually had a big hole at the base. So you could lay on your back, kind of scooch yourself up into the tree, and then shine your flashlight up. And you'd see all kinds of crazy cool eyes staring down at you. I tried that in a little experiment. This you might recognize. This is Dining Room Spider. Yes, she's still hanging in there. Bless her heart. This is her egg case that she's still guarding. She has eye shine right here. You can see it a little bit better right here. I think I tried to zoom in on it. Yeah, there it is. The main sight eyes of a spider. Most spiders in our area have 8 eyes. And you can use the arrangement of those eyes to help narrow down, at least to the family of spider that you're looking at. It's not usually the larger eyes that are going to reflect at some of the smaller eyes that they have. So here she was staring back at me. She actually got a little irritated because she likes to guard her eggs, and I kept flashing my cell phone camera at her, and she eventually crawled away and went underneath the leaves here until I was done. But so that's our look at eye shine, things you can do now. We've got many hours of darkness here in the wintertime. If you do take a flashlight or a camera with you when you go out, just sometimes I'll just shoot a picture, you know, at the woods and see if anything is shining back at me. You can do it with spiders too. You can go down in the basement, use this flashlight to see if anything shines back at you if you don't turn any lights on. So yeah, just a little fun activity you might want to give a try. Now, dining room spider, I have to tell you, I thought we were going to lose her. Around Christmas, she was looking pretty thin and pretty dark. I give her water every day. I spritz or mist some water so that she's got some droplets to drink. But she wasn't really taking any food, and it's stands to reason. You might remember, those of you who were watching the week I talked about Spider Mentor. That's a woman in Western Pennsylvania who has a really cool website and blog about spider habits. She kind of given me a heads up that these Agelenopsis, the grass spiders, don't usually survive much beyond December or January. So I think she was gently preparing me for what's inevitable. I thought we were getting towards that point, but then yesterday I thought, you know, I'm going to try feeding her again. And so I dropped this insect in dubia cockroach, and lo and behold, she pounced on it and she fed on it for about 2 hours and plumped up her abdomen again. So now I wonder, is she going to get ready to lay another batch of eggs, or was this just a little snack that she took because she was hungry? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, but I'll keep you updated on the status of dining room spider. Speaking of Spider Mentor, one of the times I spoke with her or emailed with her, we haven't actually talked on the phone. I had mentioned that when dining room spider spun her egg case, she put all these little dots on the glass. These are anchors that the spider then uses to attach silk to, because glass is pretty slick. Spider Mentor said that in the book Spider Silk, it talks about how this is a completely different mixture of proteins. Spiders can combine those proteins to make all different kinds of silk. There's silk that's sticky, there's silk that's not sticky, there's silk that's weatherproof for protecting the eggs. There's depending on the spider and the arrangement of spinnerets, there's all kinds of combinations they can make. But she mentioned that book, and I thought, you know what, that sounds like something I might be interested in. So I've ordered a copy. It hasn't arrived yet, but Spider Silk, Evolution, 400 million years of spinning, waiting, snagging, and mating is hopefully winging its way towards my mailbox. And when it arrives, I'll be sure and let you know about all the exciting tidbits that are in there. And you might want to put on your reading list too. Who knows? So moving right along, I've got a question for you. When is a red oak not a red oak? This little segment actually takes a place over in Mount St. Mary's Park. If you're familiar with St. Charles, you know that that's the park at the south edge of downtown. It's bordered by Route 31 and Prairie Street. Some of you I know walk there quite frequently. And this is Mr. Edwards. That's the statue you see if you happen to be driving along on Route 31. Well, I got this email, I don't know, a week or so ago. It says, an oak in the far southwest corner as the trail enters the park is labeled red oak. Do you think it could be Quercus schumardii? The bark is all wrong for red oak, with nothing better to do but keep you on your toes, John Doerr. So I bet you several of you recognize that name, John Doerr. He is he's kind of like the modern day Dick Young. John was a botanist before becoming involved with the King County Forest Preserve District. He actually ended up being the director of the Forest Preserve District for many years. The guy knows his plants. And for him to walk by a tree and notice we were saying it was one thing and him thinking it was another, this definitely bore some following up. So I actually forwarded John's email over to Dave Svitek, who is the arborist here at the senior district. This is the tree in question. Dave was familiar with it. I only knew it as a tree in the park. I never even noticed that it had a tag on it. But Dave wrote back, he may be correct. A shoe-marned oak does have similar leaves to a red, but this bark is more smooth than a true red. The tree was identified by, I'm not going to say their name, a local tree service when they created our GIS inventory back in 2012. I've corrected other tree IDs over the years. We could take the sign down until we can confirm in the next growing season. Well, let's back up here a little bit. So this is the tree, and this is the bark that John was questioning. Now, a while back, 20 years or so, which seems like just yesterday, when I was learning about trees and bark, I learned how tree barks are very, very different depending on the species. Well, sometimes they're very, very similar too, but there's certain things that you can kind of reliably look for. When you see a shagbark hickory, you know that the bark's going to be very shaggy. When you see the bark of an ash tree, the green ash and the white ash, it has kind of a vaguely diamond shaped pattern to it. The indentations between the ridges look kind of diamond shape. The birches have very distinctive barks. There's a tree, some people call it blue beech, some people call it musclewood because the bark actually looks like strong sinewy muscle. So bark is a very, very good way to learn how to identify trees, and you pick up differences in bark. You can identify trees even in the middle of winter, which we are approaching. So here's the tree. Now in this next slide, these are examples of red oak bark. And as I started to say, when I was learning tree barks, I learned that the bark of the red oak looks like ski tracks. So can you just kind of imagine, and we're talking cross-country ski tracks here, not perfectly straight, but kind of unbroken gaps where the gaps are between the ridges. Can you see how this would kind of resemble ski tracks? Now, if we compare that with what we've got going on here, we've got all kinds of twists and turns. This would actually probably look like me on skis, not terribly precise or linear. So I think John is onto something. The other ways to identify trees, of course, we've all made leaf collections in the past. There are still some leaves on this tree. There's buds that we can look at, and there's also the caps on the acorns that we can use to help pin down the identity of this tree. But like our arborist said, this has happened in the past where we've gotten an ID incorrect. In fact, we even had one in the native plant garden behind Potawatomi. This was several years ago. We realized we had not only was it incorrectly identified, but it was not even native, and it was a sort of a centerpiece oak in the natural, the native plant garden behind Potawatomi. It turned out to be a sawtooth oak, which shortly after we identified what it was, it just mysteriously died. And I always wondered if it was by accident or not, but it is no longer there, but we were way off on its identification as well. Anyway, if you happen to be at Mount St. Mary's, that tagged tree that says red oak might not always have that identity. It might get an update as we get into later winter and spring. And I thought Dave gave a nice nod to John. He said, feel free to let John know he can critique our tree ID anytime. So we may just have him do that. Anyway, moving right along, we are going to take a trip down below the snow. I took this photo. I went for a walk with one of our Hickory Knolls alumni last week. Alison Cooper. She worked front desk, she did programs for us, and she also worked with our restoration crew before going on to her now full-time position with the Forest Service in Saratoga, Wyoming. Well, she came back to her old stomping grounds. Her folks live out in Campton Hills, and she wanted to take a walk at Hickory, so we spent a couple hours exploring things, and we just kept coming across these trails. And it reminded me of one of my very favorite topics to talk about in the winter. The Subnivean zone, or the Subnivean layer. This is a really cool phenomenon that happens in places that have snow. Again, I couldn't find a graphic that I thought was suitable, so I tried to make my own. We're going to see how this works. Let's take this winter scene here, and we're going to add, we're going to go below the snow. So visualize this is happening underneath that layer of snow. There's a little critter making a trail. Oh, it's a mouse. Now, why is that mouse going underneath the snow and not on top of the snow? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, it's a lot easier to avoid predation if you're below the snow, especially in years when we have a lot of snow. Our rodents and other creatures that live close to the ground actually have a really easy time, much easier time of surviving than they do in years when we have little amounts of snow. So there's that. There's also the phenomenon of temperature. If we have a cold winter day, let's say it's 0 degrees out, that snow is actually going to be warmer than the air. Snow is frozen water. Water freezes at 32 degrees. Then if we go below the snow to the area right above the ground, when snow falls and hits the ground, remember our ground temperature is always going to be a little bit warmer than the air temperature too. Actually quite a bit warmer. If you go down a few feet, if you get below our frost line here in northern Illinois, that ground is 55 degrees. So when snow hits the ground, there's always going to be a little bit of melting that occurs. Usually it creates a gap then of as much as an inch. Well, guess what can run around on 4 legs and only be an inch tall? Mice, but also shrews. Lots of insects remain active in the wintertime, and some spiders too. So there's a great deal of activity going on underneath that Subnivean layer. And it is widely known to our predators. So, I mentioned that if these little guys are able to run around in relative comfort, it's not balmy underneath there, but it is above freezing, which is very important. And by the way, none of these animals underneath the ground hibernate. The mice and we're also going to throw voles in there because voles are very active and they're actually some of the primary tunnel makers. Shrews have extremely high metabolisms. They can't even afford to sleep at night. They've got to eat about every 15 minutes. They will, depending on the type of shrew, if it's say a small masked shrew, they'll be feeding on these invertebrates. If it's a larger shrew, like the northern short-tailed shrew, they're going to be going after insects, but also some of these mammals as well. So lots and lots of activity going on underneath the ground. This little guy might not want to run into the shrew or the fox or the coyote from above. This is a classic wild canine predator pose. They pounce and then they're able to break through the crust of the snow, get down into those tunnels that are down below and snag themselves a little feast. So look, next time you go out, be aware and look for signs of activity. You'll be amazed at how much is going on. I know sometimes some of us aren't so pleased when the snow melts in the springtime and you see residual activity as well. There's sometimes tracks and trails and tunnels that are left on our lawns as well. But there is a very, very high amount of activity going on, even when it looks like it's a calm and peaceful and quiet winter day. Now, this is an example of what can happen when you don't adhere to the Subnivean highways and byways. So here we see there were some little mammals. This was taken by my good friend, Miss Margaret Gazdaka. She was the manager for several years at Red Oak Nature Center. And here's a bird of prey who came down on this little creature here. So we can see there's some hopping going on. And if this was a mouse, I would say that we would see more of a tail drag than we do. Mice have very long tails. Voles have very short tails. So I'm going to guess this was a vole. Hippity hop, hippity hop, hippity hop. Not sure actually if it was this trail or this trail, or if this bird of prey got a twofer. But anyway, bam, crash. Animals that don't, that are vulnerable to predation like this, and they don't stick underneath the ground, very bad things can happen to them. Of course, it was a very good thing for that bird of prey. We never did quite decide if it was an owl or a hawk, but it was a really cool pattern in the snow. Speaking of, we're going to look at some more stories. So last week when we looked at tracks, we compared and contrasted cat tracks and dog tracks. Similar animals in some ways, but when you pick apart the tracks and the arrangement of the toes and the heel pad, you find out that it's actually pretty easy to tell the difference between the two. Well, this week we are going to take a look at a couple other sets of tracks that bamboozled me for a long time until I really started to study them and pay attention to the patterns that they create. This is a picture I took the other day. Thought it was pretty clear, shows a pretty long stride here from here to here. Here's a footprint for scale. I did not have my lip balm with me for whatever reason. So a hop and then another hop. That's probably almost 2 feet distance between these two. If we look more closely at it, we see this animal's got, these would be the front paws and these would be the back paws. It's kind of doing a leapfroggy motion, putting front paws first and springing its back legs forward so they land in front of the front paws. This is the track and trail of the gray squirrel. I probably should have done a better job of showing the habitat that this occurred in, but there's actually a tree right over here. So trees in a track pattern like this, you know that you're looking at the movements of a squirrel. Now, gray squirrel and fox squirrel, that can get a little bit trickier. Fox squirrels are about twice the size of gray squirrels. And sometimes you can discern that difference in their tracks. It's always hard though if you're not comparing the two side by side, but most of the time we can just look at that and say squirrel and be happy with that. Now this animal, the cottontail rabbit, has a similar kind of a stride, I guess you'd call it. When it's hopping, it puts its front feet down first, and then its back feet land in front of those front. So hippity hop, front legs followed by back, front followed by back. This is the work of the cottontail rabbit. And again, I did show a little bit of habitat here. This rabbit was heading straight for this very rabbity habitat, tall grasses. There were no trees in this particular area. So Where you're seeing the tracks can also help you fill in the story of whose tracks those belong to. So keep that in mind as well. The other thing that I'd like to do is show a couple little devices you can use to try and remember. This is the squirrel track here on the left. You can see that it kind of forms a square, SQ squirrel, SQ square. So if you see tracks in this sort of fashion, you're looking at a squirrel. This is a rabbit. And here we've got the rear feet down first, the two front feet behind. This kind of forms a Y or a V. And if you hold your index finger and your middle finger up in a victory sign, those also form rabbit ears. So V for victor, V for victory, V for rabbit. It's an easy way to help tell those two tracks apart. So square, squirrel, Y or V for rabbit, and near trees, not near trees. They do go back and forth sometimes. My mom has a shrub next to a tree. The squirrels go up the tree, the bunnies go under the shrub. There's a whole mishmash of squirrel and rabbit tracks in that part of her yard. But anyway, just some little tips and tricks to help you define those two tracks. And by the way, it is getting to be some really good tracking weather. We had that ice on top of the snow last week. That was not so good. A lot of animals did not break through. But then we got that little dusting of snow. Was that over the weekend? And it made for some very, very nice tracking conditions. So anyway, a little something to amuse yourself with should you find yourself out walking in the snow, which I hope you do. Now, I got an email the other day from a reader. She wanted to know about hawks and their vision. She said that their neighborhood red-tailed hawk is a character to spy. He likes to sit high in the trees so he can pick out his next meal. We're wondering if his vision has infrared capabilities so he can spot moles, foals, and other critters under the snow, in the Subnivean layer. Perhaps a future column topic? Thanks, April. Well, I did a little digging around. I had not heard about hawks having infrared capabilities, and it turns out they don't, and neither do mammals because they're warm-blooded, and producing heat kind of negates the ability to be able to see heat. There are animals that have infrared, reptiles that feed on warm-blooded creatures. Some can perceive infrared parts of the spectrum, but generally speaking, or not generally speaking, birds don't. But it did call to mind a couple of other things about raptor vision that I wanted to point out. I thought you guys might think this is kind of cool too. So this photo shows a red-tailed hawk in profile. And these are diurnal hunters. And think about yourself out on a sunny day. Hopefully you wear sunglasses to protect your eyes. I know I always supplement that with a cap or a hat of some sort. So I've got shade over my eyes. And if I do find myself without either of those two things, I take one of my hands and I hold them up over my eyes to act as a sort of a visor. Well, hawks can't do that. They don't wear hats. They don't have hands. But they do have this cool ridge above the eye. And look at how it provides shade to the eye. It's sort of like a built-in brim of a ball cap or a built-in visor. And it does, they do have very, very keen eyesight for great distances. There's all kinds of figures on the internet of just how the visual acuity of a red-tailed hawk. But that would be worthless if the sun was glaring in their eyes and they wouldn't be able to see. So they have that built-in visor above the eye to help shade as they're hunting. But April's question also reminded me of something I had learned a long time ago. There was a series of videos, I believe they were produced by the Smithsonian, and it was early on in VHS. It was actually the heyday of places like Blockbuster, and you could rent these videos that would explain things like the senses of a bird of prey. And I remember watching a segment over and over again about the vision of the American kestrel. And they talked about how the kestrel is able to see UV reflectance and use that to follow the urine trails of its prey, which is a lot of times voles. It turns out voles and mice too, actually, I've heard it's put two different ways. I've heard one, they mark their trails with urine. I've also heard that they just have really weak bladders. So, whatever it is, they're drippy little creatures and they leave a lot of urine behind them. And so if you've ever seen a red-tailed hawk, American kestrel hunting above a field, they do this posture. It's called kiting, where they hold their position steady up in, say, 30, 40 feet above the field. They flap their wings rapidly, but they can kind of hold themselves in a position, kind of the same way a helicopter would hover, but their wings aren't spinning, but they're holding their position above the ground and they're scanning the ground below. And in this Smithsonian video, they showed the kestrel doing that, and then they applied some graphics saying, it's tracking the urine trail of its prey, and then it would fly down and grab that unfortunate little animal. Well, I wanted to see, if there'd been any updates to that, and there's still a lot of information about kestrels, and I believe it was also rough-legged hawks that are able to, and rough-legged hawks too also do this kiting behavior where they hold a position in the sky and look down. So there's a lot of research showing that yes, they do follow UV, the urine trails by following the UV reflectance, but there's also a study, ultraviolet sensitivity and color vision in raptor foraging. This was a study done in 2013, and they made a pretty plausible case for UV reflectance not playing a role in raptor foraging. Now, their sample size was fairly small. They had several different species of birds of prey, but they said that they didn't feel as though the UV reflectance was going to be of part of the spectrum that the birds could see, and they seemed to be able to track their prey whether there was UV reflectance or not. So this is one of these great mysteries of nature still. We don't know for sure if they can or if they can't, but it is still kind of fun to think about when you see them up in the sky doing their thing. And I encourage you too to do some research on your own and see what you can learn about these magnificent birds and their ability to find their food. So I've got a couple little objects I want to show you here when we stop this year. Just give you a quick heads up for what we've got coming up next week. We're going to take a look at what the snowy owls are up to this year here in Illinois. We're going to finally get to, I've been trying to get to this for a couple of weeks, but I've got it loaded into next week's slideshow. We're going to have some more another take on the fluorescence of nocturnal creatures. It turns out the Australians have been having all sorts of fun since they discovered that the platypus fluoresces all kinds of crazy colors under black light. There's some more information that some of you sent in and shared. So we're gonna take a look at what the Aussies have been up to. Got some more tracks in the snow that we're gonna take a look at, and a couple of fun reader emails. So with that, I'm going to stop tonight's screen share, come back to real life, and if you'll bear with me just a second, I'm going to reach back here, give you another update. Hold on. Okay. Thanks for your patience. So several weeks ago, we talked about walking stick insects. And I mentioned what we've got here in the main office at World Headquarters. We've got a tank of Annam walking sticks, A-N-N-A-M, that is not the native walking stick that we have here. In our region, we have the northern walking stick as the species we find in our hardwood forests. They like to feed on oak trees, hickory trees, that sort of thing. Well, these walking sticks actually have a taste for the same kind of leaves. We'll sometimes feed them oak leaves in the summertime. They really like black cherry and choke cherry leaves. Well, as you can kind of tell, this was the mama from this particular generation of walking stick. She was the only surviving walking stick from this particular generation. I should mention the Annam walking stick is parthenogenic. They can reproduce with only females, and this was the only female that survived from the last generation. We had a little trouble keeping the substrate moist, and only one egg survived and hatched, but we took real good care of her, and she survived throughout last spring and summer and fall. But I came in the other day, she wasn't looking too good, and she has indeed passed. But she makes a really cool specimen. I might try to see if I can find a container of hand sanitizer that's big enough to put her into so that we can preserve her even longer. But for now, she's just sitting on the top of the tank there. But so that's the sad part of the update. The happy part of the update is that she has left quite a legacy. We have about 18 little walking sticks that are now not just surviving, but thriving in their mock habitat over here. I've got an aquarium with several sticks and leaves. Boy, this one's very active. I was hoping it would go into its defensive posture for you. You can see it just shed its skin. It's got a little bit of cast skin still left on its one leg that it keeps waving. It's kind of like it's trying to shake it off. There it goes. In the wintertime, what's nice about these walking sticks, they are, like I said, they are from Vietnam, so they would be considered a non-native or introduced species. We take all sorts of precautions to make sure they don't escape, but I don't think they would be able to survive in this winter climate that we have. But anyway, in the wintertime, they eat romaine lettuce. And then come springtime, we'll put them back on a diet of black cherry and choke cherry and oak leaves. But anyway, just kind of a happy little update that I wanted to share with you, that our walking sticks are doing very well. I actually acquired the first generation that I started keeping these. I got them, I look back, it was in 2003. So we're going into 18 years of keeping walking sticks. They're they're fun little insects to have. If you want to do your own independent research, Annam walking stick is the common name, Annam. They also, over in Great Britain, there's a lot of people who are insect fanciers. Someone once told me that sometimes the homes that are in the major cities there, they don't have much in the way of yard space. So a lot of people get into insect keeping as a way of being able to have pets. Well, anyway, there's a group that I believe started in, I think it was England. It's called the Phasmid Study Group. Phasmidae is the order that these insects, the family that these insects belong to. And the Phasmid Study Group actually undertook the task of giving all the insects that they keep, because a lot of them don't have common names, they started assigning them numbers. So Phasmid Study Group is PSG, and the Annam walking sticks are PSG number 5. So Phasmid Study Group insect number 5. And I've just been having a lot of fun watching these grow. This one has probably shed, I would say this is its 3rd instar, maybe 4th. We've got a few that are larger, and then we've still got them popping up. The mama, before she left this world, would drop eggs down. They would land in the soil. Now, in the wild, I don't know if this happens in Vietnam, but I know it does happen here with our native walking sticks. The female will drop her eggs from up in the tree, because that's where their camouflage is best. And each egg has a little strip of sugary fat or fatty sugars that ants find very enticing. So ants will oftentimes pick up walking stick eggs, carry them back to their ant homes. They'll feed off that fatty, sugary strip on the egg, and then they'll put the egg in their waste pile, which doesn't harm the egg at all. It actually protects the egg over the course of wintertime. And then in the spring, the egg hatches, a little baby walking stick climbs up and out and goes on its way, and is a kind of a fun little insight for these insects that we have fairly commonly found. Well, I shouldn't say that. The northern walking stick is a common insect here in Kane County, but it is not commonly found because of this incredible camouflage. I'm going to put this little guy back before I lose it. Hold on just a second. Little gal, I should say. I'll put her back. No, their camouflage is pretty exquisite. I actually have some twigs here. And then I have her. I mean, talk about being able to blend into the scenery. So the best time to look for walking sticks, our native walking sticks, is not January. It is August and September, before we get a hard frost. The walking sticks in this area will be at their maximum size, which is actually about this big. The females are about this size, maybe just a skosh smaller. The males tend to have a slimmer body. Sometimes they have a little bit more green on them. They also have larger antennae than these Vietnamese species, and they do not have, I don't know if you can see those little spikes on the head here. They almost look like little devil horns on the top of this walking stick head. Our native do not have those horns. But if you go out walking after a storm or after very high winds, that's your best time to be able to find walking sticks. Again, they are so very, very well camouflaged that they're hard to pick out if they're in the tree. They also tend to hang out kind of high up too. So But the wind from a storm or the hard rain will blow them down. And then sometimes, if we're lucky, if they're not so lucky, but if we're lucky, they'll land on a screen or the siding of a house or a garage door, something that's not their typical native habitat. And then they stick out really, really well. So that's kind of what I had to share with you this evening. I'm going to turn it over to you now. If we've got a chat comment. How common are American kestrels in the Fox Valley area? Great question, Kay. So kestrels, last I heard, they seem to be having a little bit of a hard time, but I can't give you a number. I don't know how many kestrels we have in the area, but you can usually spot one if you're driving and you see an animal on a utility wire. You see a bird on a utility wire. If you see several birds on a utility wire, it's usually starlings or mourning doves. Now, I do sometimes have trouble distinguishing between a mourning dove and a kestrel if I'm driving by real fast, but a kestrel being a bird of, they're actually our smallest falcons. Other things aren't going to really want to buddy up and sit close to them. So if you see one bird sitting on a utility wire, give it a second look because it could be a kestrel. I used to see one too, and I don't know what's going to happen because I see that property is for sale, but there were American kestrels in the field next to the bowling alley in St. Charles. And when I would drive by there, or if I'd go to shop at the Aldi there, I would usually see a kestrel around there. Now, King County, and actually I think King County Audubon was involved in this too. There is a young man in the area named Taylor who's he was conducting a kestrel box monitoring program. A big threat to kestrels in this area are those starlings. Kestrels are cavity nesters and starlings are cavity nesters, and starlings will sometimes oftentimes displace kestrels in nest boxes. So I know Taylor Jorad was his name. I don't know the current status of that kestrel box project, but I know there were boxes that were put up in several. We even had one out by Hickory Knolls, and Taylor was monitoring the success of the nesting success of kestrels. So I can get back to you, Kay, on the status of that program, but I would say, you have a pretty good chance of spotting one if you drive around and look at the birds that are on utility lines. Rough-legged hawks, they visit here in the wintertime, and I am not good at picking them out. There used to be one, and the only reason I know it was a rough-legged hawk was my friend who's a birder told me it was, but he used to hang out by the Home Depot on Randall Road in Geneva in the wintertime. But winter is the time to spot them as well. I did see one displaying that kiting, and I can show you my hands. This is kiting. So kestrels do that, rough-legged hawks do that. And I used to see one doing that, a rough-legged hawk doing that. This was west of Route 47 on Route 38. So open areas like that might be good places to look. Does that kind of answer your question, Kay?
Yeah, thank you. And kestrels are as small as a dove?
They're not very big. Yeah, now dove has a longer tail, but I always have to look twice if I see, and I get fooled some because every once in a while doves will sit singly, but more often they tend to group together. But if there is just one bird there, and starlings, my goodness, we've got oodles of starlings, and they'll just line up along the phone wires or whatever. But yeah, look, the kestrel has a pretty characteristic marking around its face too. Kind of reminds me of a helmet. The peregrine falcon has a very dark marking, and the kestrel markings are darker too, but they're smaller around the face. They're a beautiful bird, beautiful.
And it is a type of falcon, huh?
It is. It's our smallest falcon. Yeah.
Okay.
So they're small and they're fast.
Cool. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Anybody else have any questions? If not, I want to thank you so much for your time this evening. Again, it's a cool, warm-ish winter night with some really neat fog. Hopefully, they say the temperature is going to drop a little bit. It might be a little hazardous in the morning, they said. Might get kind of slick, but it's really cool out right now. So I wish you a happy rest of your Tuesday night, and I look forward to seeing you back again next week. Take care, everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Pam.
Pam.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. Night.
Pam.
Bye.
See you soon.
Thanks, Pam.